hell of an intro. I tell you what you info, but I never really been the type of dude to give no info.
Welcome to the Walk and Grow podcast, everyone. It's Roney and Courtney on the mic. I hope you guys are all doing well, because today's topic is going to be one for the history books. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of debates here, but there may be. And if there is, let's hear your thoughts. Let's hear your perspectives, because this is what we're always all about. And what we do is share each other's perspectives. For you guys watching, I have my hoodie on for no particular reason. You guys probably look like, oh my gosh, Ronnie has it. It's, come on, guys. You got to change the flow sometimes, you know. I would put, actually, I'll say that for another day. But Courtney, how are you doing? How you doing?
I'm all right. You're funny. I just signed on and was like, oh, Ronnie must be cold. And then automatically my brain's like, is it cold in North Carolina? Like thinking of different demographics and stuff. But because it's not cold over here. But I'm all right. I am feeling better than I was. Was not sounding so good last couple episodes, but it's all right. Still a little sniffly here and there, but getting back into normal life flow. So yeah, I'm a little sleepy.
Yeah, a little less sniffling because it helps with the editing, please.
Sorry. I'll be a mouth breather for today's episode. That already made me feel weird.
I knew it would. I know you'd be like, how do I respond to that? But I purposely did that.
No, I mean mouth breathing. I think this will go right into the topic for today, but I think we're all our own biggest critics. So when I hear the episodes, I always am like, it's so funny because, as we know, like, we sound different to ourselves, but then we have to hear ourselves on the episodes, and I'm like, oh, I thought I was like this, but I didn't expect it to be like that. And then I'm like, man, I was super sniffly, or like, whatever it was, or I noticed so many more than I think I say, or whatever it is. But
you know what they say? If you say a lot, that means you don't know what you're talking about.
Is that correct?
I'm not saying that's the truth, but I'm not saying that it's either about you as well, but
yeah, right.
That's something that I've heard. If someone is saying a lot, yeah, of course it's okay to pause and think about it, but it's like when you're saying you can just, instead of saying just don't say anything and just kind of be in your own head and think about what you need to say next. But
it's funny, I feel like I've had so many platforms where I hear myself talk, or like I notice how I talk, because like being a teacher, you notice the things that you're saying to a room full of people. Being a therapist, you notice the words that you use to the people who are in front of you, because that matters, especially in that space. And then I hear myself on a recording, and there's just like so many different places where I'm like, wow, I use that word or that phrase, or I hear myself I know I do it on here, but definitely in therapy, I'm like, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And I'm like, oh my God, after everything. But yeah, just see. But I'm gonna notice myself doing it all day now. I think it definitely goes.
You should have somebody count.
No counters.
No, it's progressively. Like you mentioned, we are our biggest critics, and I actually had a conversation with one of our previous guests about that. Right, about this particularly, because he's practicing something new, and it's, of course, uncomfortable for him to go somewhere where you're not experiencing and doing those things on a regular basis. And I could see it. I was like, man, you are being really hard on yourself. And I will say you're doing just fine. Yeah, of course there could be a room of improvement with us all, right? But I was like, yo, you're doing just fine. Like, he's like, I appreciate you for even sharing that and hearing it, because it's like, I'm watching myself, but also to know that you're actually watching and going to help me through this. And, that's definitely helpful on his end.
Definitely.
But yeah, I guess we can roll right into what we want to talk about, which is imposter syndrome. How do you feel about it, Courtney?
So I don't think we're going to disagree. I don't think you and I are going to disagree on anything in terms of...
Maybe I'll change my stance.
Oh, just all of a sudden for episode purposes. No, I don't think we... In terms of what we've already mentioned about imposter syndrome. But it's funny because my thoughts on it, or my perspective on it, is I never really thought about it until in the clinical world, until being a therapist. And it might have just been because I didn't know the phrase or the term itself, but I never thought about it until this job. And so I've been in this job for 3 years. So right around 3 years ago was the first time I really felt it for myself, and just kind of had that experience. But that's the first time I ever really came across it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because more recently, I've heard conversations about it in a personal lens. And I'm like, oh, I guess I never thought about it, like using it personally, but I'm like, that does make sense. Like, do I fit in this space? Do I belong in this space? Am I good enough to be here? Do these people like me? Do I fit in? Like, there's lots of different ways to look at it. I just think that has not been my experience with it.
Mine either. Interesting that someone would use it on a personal scale, because I would only look at it as professionally. Speaking, like when it came to work, really, it's because that's when you're learning something new, and that's kind of when I experienced it the most. Is when I'm doing something new that I just don't know, and sometimes it's one of those, just like Courtney, our previous guest, mentioned, fake it till you make it kind of thing, right? It's that aspect of living in that moment of just trying to navigate and learn as much as you can and still apply it. And yeah, I catch myself all the time. I think even with the podcast, I mean, in the beginning stages of it, we didn't know a lick of what we were doing, right? We're learning as we're going through it all. But as you go through it more and you just do it, you start to get even more accustomed to what's actually happening. So I don't know how so much it could be. I personally don't. I haven't, not that I could think of it personally speaking. How does it personally relate to me? Unless if it's a hobby of mine. But still, if it's a hobby of mine, then it's something that I'm doing, not so much of what other people need to be critiquing me on, or at least observing me and making sure I'm doing it right.
Well, if you're in a hobby, so I'm thinking, I don't know how to make this hypothetical, so I'm just going to make it real. So I'm thinking rugby, obviously, it's the hobby that like takes up most of my time, things like that. If I don't feel like I fit in that space, or if I don't feel like I'm good enough to be there, good enough to be on the team, whatever it is, does that count as imposter syndrome, or does that count as just me not feeling like I'm enough in that space?
I personally would say that's just you. Because how I look at imposter syndrome is more of, you don't know what you're doing, so you're trying to act like you know what you're doing. That's just kind of how I look at it. So if you don't fit into a space, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't belong. Maybe you just need to learn something else or practice a little bit more to feel as if you should belong. But I think personally, I would say that's a personal thing. I would say more than because everyone has different skill levels.
So you really do kind of compare it more to that fake it till you make it type thing, like putting on a show until you get to the point. I don't, because that's not exactly how I looked at it when I started in therapy, which is never a space I thought I would be. That's not what I wanted to do. It's not what my goals were. I remember literally, and I'm in management now, so everybody knows my training experience was not ideal when I started at this job. It's gotten a lot better since then, but I would literally sit there and be like, who trusts me with these kids? Like, who says, you know what I mean? Like, I was just so new to it, and it was not the space that I thought I would be in. And it's like, I just started at this place, and they're allowing me to talk to children. Like, they don't know once you shut the door, they don't know what I'm doing. I document it. And of course I didn't want to do any harm or anything like that. But I'm like, who says I know what I'm doing enough to help these kids? Like, you're in a space that is so important. And, it's like, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? Like, how do I know? So I didn't.
So at any point.
But sorry, what I was trying to say was I wasn't faking anything. I wasn't in a fake it till I make it mode. I was in a, what am I doing here? I need to do the best that I can because I'm not quite sure of where I'm at yet.
I think that's a confident thing, though.
So you wouldn't consider that imposter syndrome?
No, because you're learning. I mean, let's be real. We wake up every day trying to figure this thing called life out. Like, there's nobody that has it all figured out. So if in all reality, we probably all are faking it till we make it at some point in time.
If we want to talk about fake it till you make it, that's just life.
Right.
Like, daily.
That's just, that's just every day. But I think when you put the intention behind it, I think that's when a lack of just confidence in yourself. Whereas if you're like, I'm going to be in this room and I'm going to not put the work in to figure it out, then yeah, I think you are absolutely living in imposter syndrome, because you're not even putting the work in to get over that it's really an educational phase or experience phase at that point in time. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, when most people, you come out of college, it's happened to me. Come out of college, you try to find a job. They all want experience. What experience am I going to have?
Yeah.
Please tell me. I just got out of school. What? So yes, they even want you to fake it at some point, because you have no real experience. So it's like, what do you really hold on to? And I think that's where the confidence aspect and just what you've done can pretty much elevate you to another level, where now you're not just playing this role, I guess, here.
Yeah, it is interesting to think about, because I don't think there's ever been a space where I did try to fake it. The only thing I've ever faked, and this is part of the reason I didn't like, I was just going to say, this is the only, I don't know where your brain just went.
I don't know what you're about to say. That's why.
What I was gonna say was, this is part of the reason I didn't like teaching, was because I can't believe you right now. The only thing I didn't like, or one of the things I didn't like about teaching, was they would talk about like faking, like being happy. Like, you have to be happy, you have to be animated, you have to be. And the way that I am, I think part of the reason I do so well with my teens is I don't fake anything. Like, they know who I am as a person, because we all have good days, we all have bad days. Why do I, as a therapist, have to act like every day is perfect for me when that's not realistic? And I'm telling them that they don't have to act like that. So I'm very authentic. And as a teacher in front of groups of students, I was the same way. Like, it doesn't mean if I was in a bad mood, I was angry at all of them. Like, yeah, we have to be able to manage our moods and manage our emotions and things like that. But that's one thing that they taught us in school, was like kind of needing to fake it and put on this, like, teaching is a little bit like acting. I'm like, I don't want to act. I want to actually be interested in these kids and actually be interested in their education. And that's not to talk negatively about teachers. Like, I know some kindergarten teachers are going to need to act differently than a high school teacher would, right? Like, you put on different faces and things like that. But I don't know. I don't feel like I've ever been in a fake it till you make it type setting, because I always come from a place of, and this is kind of a topic that I wanted to dive deeper into another time, is just coming from a place of curiosity, coming from a place of, I want to seek out information, and I'm not scared to say that I need more information on this. Yeah.
Sorry to go.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when I was getting out of my master's program. So you're right. I didn't have any experience clinically. I knew, coming from teaching, I think I'm a good teacher. I did well in grad school. It's like, I know all of these things, and I know I can do a good job. I know the experience that I have, but this is still very new to me, and I understand the importance of it. And I really respect therapy, and I respect, the space that therapy creates, and the bond that should be made between myself and the client. So it's like, that's where the imposter syndrome was to me. That's what I kind of defined it as, was like, I don't know if I'm good enough to be in this space, but I have to seek out the information to make sure I don't feel that way anymore. And I didn't come up with that. I would share with a supervisor that I'm uncomfortable, or that, like, who trusts me to do this? I don't know why people decided I could do this. And then that my supervisors were the one who was like, yeah, you're noticing a little bit of imposter syndrome right now. Like, that's really common when you first start, or when you try something new, or when you work with a new age group. I don't think I feel it anymore. But if someone told me, we're going to widen your range and you're going to work with birth to 5 or 5 to 10, I'd be like, I'm absolutely an imposter in this area, because I don't belong there. So that's kind of the way that I've looked at it and learned it in my space professionally.
Yeah. I mean, for myself, I would say I learned really quickly, for me, early stages in real estate real quickly, because you have to make a lot of disclosures. The second that you lie, oh my goodness, you are on the hook to get sued really quickly. So you can't really play any sort of fake or imposter syndrome role there, because you have to disclose these things. But I would say I learned really quickly to just say, I will find the answer out for you. And that is the way that I just kind of let people know, like, no, I don't know. Just be more than happy to share that information, because who knows everything? Nobody. I mean, if you do, then you must be, I don't know, whoever out there knows everything.
You must be the person who knows everything then.
Right.
That's
But
funny.
it's really quickly, you just learn. I learned, I would say for myself, just understand that you don't know everything, and not everybody knows everything. And I think people are okay with you just telling them, I don't have the answers, but I will get them the answer. But the thing is, actually getting them the answer is what's more important. Don't say you're going to get them the answer and forget or not do it.
Yeah.
That now makes you look like a true, imposter syndrome person, or fake it till you make it, someone that's just doesn't even have their best interest at heart at the same time.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But I think everyone's gonna experience this when you're starting anything new. I mean, anything. And I think the best way to combat it is just, like you said, be curious. Be curious and have the confidence and understand that you're going to be the best at what you're going to do. And at that point in time, you can't really fake it because you're learning.
Yeah, definitely. I just looked, so we have different experiences with it, and we have different kind of, we wrap our heads around it differently, I think, which very similarly, but just a little bit different. So I looked it up.
It's different. It's okay to say that.
I wasn't, okay, anyway. So I looked up just to kind of see what is written, or like how to actually define it. It says the psychological experience of feeling like a fake or a phony despite any genuine success that you've achieved. So that's kind of, the way I said it in my head, I'm like, that's not very nice. But I was going to say, it's kind of exactly what I said, because that's like, despite knowing the information that I have and knowing that we're good at our jobs, it's that feeling of like, I'm not enough to be here. That I think just that experience in itself. And this one is kind of breaking it down. It says there's 5 types of imposter syndrome. So the perfectionist, the expert, the natural genius, the soloist, or the super person. Just kind of feeling as though if you need to ask for help, it's a problem. If you're not like, super person, superman, superwoman in this area, it's a problem. If you don't automatically have all the answers, like you said, being able to ask for help, things like that. Like if we don't have perfectionist traits, if we make mistakes. Yeah.
And I think everyone is going to be one of these.
Yeah.
At some point. It's just a matter of which one and what do you do when you find yourself in those situations. Because I think I'll go back to what you mentioned, right? It's having the knowledge, well, feeling like a fake or phony despite having the knowledge. But then I can also say that if you weren't capable of doing the work, you wouldn't be in that position. So
exactly.
What's the feeling for, right? There's a reason why you're there. Is because you've worked worked your butt off to get to that position, to that point. So even if you feel things aren't the way it is, or you feel like it's you're getting a feeling, it's like, why am I doing this? Or why you feel like a fake phony, fake it till you make it. Yeah, so does everybody else. But you're learning, so go truck along and do what you have to do to get to the level or the expertise of where you're looking to get to. I think it's going to exist, and I think as long as an individual doesn't let it supersede its own, work ethic and just kind of their own mind, you're fine.
Yeah. I do like the idea of talking a little bit more about like how we can get out of it. So is that something that you used to experience and you don't necessarily experience anymore?
I mean, I care less, a lot less as I get older, what people think and how they view me. So maybe it's a good thing, maybe it's a bad thing. I don't know, but I just stopped really trying to be I would not say the perfectionist, because I think I view myself as like, hey, I want to have certain things and be that perfectionist, but in other people's eyes, I don't really care. As long as it looks good to me, I'm fine. And how everybody else feels, well, I'm sorry you feel like that. I'm just gonna keep moving on with my life.
But do you think the imposter syndrome, when you noticed it, was that coming from you, or was that coming from you concerned about how other people were feeling.
It's always going to come from me.
Mm-hmm.
How other people feel, that's how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I can't control those
Yeah.
things.
Well, I just
only thing I could. Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, like, if we are the ones, I feel like I'm having imposter syndrome because I am not good enough to be in this space or whatever it is. But then you said it's okay now because I don't care how other people feel. It wasn't other people
Yeah.
putting that on you; it was you putting that on you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the best, yes, it does. But if you're learning through it, then I'm fine with it. But if I'm not doing anything, then yeah, I would feel a lot worse.
So it's more about kind of controlling the controllables, which is how
Exactly.
you feel in that moment.
Exactly. I think that's all what everything we do is all about. You can't control anything else outside of yourself. So
yeah, I think.
I mean,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, in this moment, like in this particular topic, if I had to think of a way to, like, okay, so now that we understand what imposter syndrome is, how do we not feel that way? I think my brain kind of goes to that emotion versus logic. Because again, it's like based on that definition, it's despite the information that we do have and the knowledge and the experience that we do have. So a lot of times we get caught up in the emotion of like, I don't feel like I'm meant to be here. People don't like me. I don't, maybe I don't fit in, when it's like based on the logic and based on the knowledge, I do deserve to be here. Like you said, I'm here for a reason. Like somebody gave me this position because they think I deserve to be here. I didn't just waltz into this, right? So, so I do deserve to be here in some way, shape, or form. If there's more information that I need to gather, okay, then I got to go out and do that. And in a lot of spaces, everybody has a supervisor. Everybody has someone that they can go to lead them. I mean, we have all this information at our fingertips now, So yeah, I think it's easier said than done. I'm not a person who is scared of emotion. I'm a very emotional person, but I also understand that there are sometimes we have to separate them and we have to put kind of logic first to get ourselves out of that. That can just become a spiral, and we don't want that to happen. So,
like for myself, right? I'm a real estate agent, and I moved to a place that I have zero idea what it's all about, right? I'm telling people move here to come to this area that I just moved to. So it's like, man, you don't even know the lay of the land. So what was the best way that I had to learn? I was like, well, if I'm going to help people move here, I have to understand where I'm telling them to move. So I'm going to learn about it. And if I don't know something, hey, they just put something on my radar to go figure that information out. All right, cool. Learn about it and then move forward and be able to provide that information moving forward. But it's, again, and I'm very transparent with people. I moved here 5 years ago. This is not where I'm born. It's not where I was raised. I'm not a native here. I don't preach this area at all. I just like it because of the lifestyle it provides to me. But that aspect of it, everyone that I work with knows I do not, and I did not live here as a native. This is just not where I'm from. So and that's where the people that I coexist with, or at least I work with, we become relatable because they're moving from somewhere else. So it's like, oh, okay, you moved here. How's your experience been in X, Y, and Z? And the conversation just kind of goes on and on from there. But I think just the definition itself saying despite the education and knowledge, I would piss all over that because it's like, you can't just ignore that information. Like that's stuff that's you have.
Well, that's what it's saying.
Already.
That's what it's saying is like you feel a certain way despite knowing that you're educated. Like I know I deserve to be here, but I still feel that's where the imposter comes in is like, why do I feel like I don't belong here even though I know that I'm meant to be here, right? So podcasting, for example, like I don't like people don't. Why would people listen to me? Like, what do I know about information that people want to hear? They don't want to hear about what we talk about. Like, we could feel that way and feel that way and feel that way, but we also know, I have a lot of knowledge to share. I know I have important things, just the way that you respond sometimes when I tell you things. It's like,
how do I respond?
Like with the boundary conversation, you get, or there's certain things that each other shares, like knowledge that each other shares, or our guests obviously share that is obviously beneficial. We know it's beneficial. The way that we react to our guests, right? It shows that like this is useful and there is a space for this, but we can still at times get, a little bit in our own heads about, and I never finish a thought. Get in our own heads about whether or not we deserve to be here or if we have something actually to share or whatever it is. And that's why I said the difference between emotion versus logic. allowing our emotions, allowing our kind of anxiety or insecurities or things like
But
that.
that's normal to feel when you're doing something new.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like if you don't feel those things, that means you've been doing it for so long. You're comfortable. You're content with the way that you feel and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The second that something feels uncomfortable, good. That's what we call growth. Walk
Yeah.
and grow, guys. Come on now. Let's get with the program. you know,
Yeah.
it's okay to feel those things. And I kid you not. I'm sure when I started the podcast, I don't remember how exactly I felt, but it wasn't. This is like it's uncomfortable. It's like new.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? How are we supposed to speak? It's like there's a certain way to do certain things to keep people's attention. Yes, 100%. When I speak to people now, I talk to them like they're my friend,
Yeah.
right? Where maybe 5-10 years ago, I would be freaking nervous just to say hi to somebody. So it's those things that you're just constantly practicing and just doing with, I guess, not really. I mean, I do it unconsciously at this point in time, but not really overthinking it and just doing it is one of those things. Which now I'm kind of like talking to myself. It's like, well, yeah, you've been saying you're gonna do this for a very long time, and you still have yet to do it. So what's the problem here?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think we're saying the same things. I think we're just saying it differently because it definitely is okay. We're not saying imposter syndrome is like a problem. It's
Well, some
something we
I
need
know.
to get over and work through, but it's not something that like I don't think we do it on purpose. It's something we
Yeah,
experience. That
you just
discomfort,
experience.
yeah, discomfort with growth and working through. We talked a lot with Darian about working through discomfort and reaching that peak and things like that. And yeah, I mean, Darian talked about hiking and talked about like physical experiences that we have. And you could be in the middle of the mountain and be like, what am I doing here? Is that imposter syndrome? Is that like me getting to a point where it's like, I thought I could accomplish this, but I can't? And deciding mentally I cannot do this. Why did I think this is something I could accomplish when physically maybe we could? I'm just expanding the conversation.
Yeah,
But I think
I don't know.
because if we go back to the just rugby conversation or any sport or any skill that you put effort into and that is becoming difficult for you, if you think
But
about
we're gonna, Courtney, I'm sorry, but we're going to fail at certain
yeah,
things, right? We're not gonna accomplish everything, and I think that's what that example you used with Darian going on a hike and getting halfway through, like, all right, I got X amount of miles left to go, or I can see the finish line, and my body is just not going to allow me to do that. I think yes. I don't know if I would call it imposter.
well,
You
in my
tried at
mind,
it, and you
is it
just
your body or your mind that's telling you you can't? I think that's the difference. But
it could be a mixture of
yeah,
both. It all depends on the person
yeah,
and the situation and just where you're at. Because I don't know if you heard of this thing called 75 hard. Have you
yeah,
heard of it? Okay. So I know someone who recently tried it, and they were going through the motions in the day to day. It's something brand new, right? And it's challenging, right? That stuff is not easy. Like it's a mental toughness thing. And I told this person, I said, don't be sorry if you get to like day whatever and you're like, this is exhausting and you can't go another day. Don't feel bad about it. That just tells you how far you're able to go. Now, the next time you do this, what's your goal? To get past that day that you
yeah,
didn't make it past, right? It's not a task to be like, yeah, I did it. It's a task to be like, hey, I was able to mentally get myself through this task, this hard bearing task that makes you do some things that you would never do on a regular basis. And I was just like, just don't feel it. And again, I think a lot of people actually live this imposter syndrome aspect when it comes to 75 hard, because I don't think anybody does it right.
yeah.
Well, I should say anybody. I give it maybe 5% of the people do it the proper way. Right? Everybody else, they just say they did it. And I was actually learned not too long ago to extend this conversation. There's something called 75 soft, and I just chuckled. That's all I'll leave it at. But
So there are modifications to everything.
yeah,
Is
a
what
lot of
you're
them.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I think individuals will live in that imposter syndrome. It's like, yeah, I did it, but it's like, did you really? That's kind of what I think about. Did you really do it? And if you did do it, then heck yeah, whatever the results are, that's what it is. And if you did do it and you half-assed it and you're telling people you did it, well, now I think you are living the life that we're talking about here.
Well, there's there's a difference between feeling like you're not good enough even though you are good enough and just lying to say that you completed something when maybe you didn't complete it to the best of your ability. And those things are going to come back. And again, that's more about the individual themselves. That's going to impact the individual themselves more than it impacts anybody else. If I told all my friends I ran a mile, but I didn't, I'm the one who didn't run the mile. It does not impact my friends that I didn't run a mile.
That's true.
You know, things like that. I was always taught that in sports. Like if you cheat on your workouts, if you cheat on your reps, that does not. It will still impact your team because you're not doing the work, but it impacts you. It impacts, you know, your body and what you're lacking.
Yeah. Everybody will see it in the stands. Your teammates, your opponents, everybody will see it. And then what happens? We exploit. That is it.
And that is not imposter syndrome. That is straight cheating and cheating yourself. But yeah, I do think this is important to talk about because it is something that people experience. And I do, the more we talk about it, even though we're kind of going all over the place, the more we talk about it, I do see how it could be experienced in different spaces. Again, back to the idea of like not feeling like you have the experience or what you need to be in that space, despite maybe logically knowing you do. I think that could be present in rugby. I think there could be, I'm just saying rugby because it's for me, but any athletes like not feeling like you're good enough to be in that space when obviously you got pulled to that level for a reason, right? You got put on that roster for a reason. You got accepted onto that team for a reason. So, and whatever it is, it could be clubs, it could be different programs, whatever, but you're there for a reason. You're learning a new skill, just allowing yourself to grow and allowing yourself to,
walk and grow.
Absolutely. And
literally.
And take your time. There's no pressure for each of those things. I think a lot of times my perspective in a lot of episodes is that giving yourself grace, giving yourself time, so on and so forth. And that has not been the direction that I've taken today. We've kind of just explored it differently, which is fine. I just think it's kind of interesting as I think about it. But yeah, but I definitely do believe in that, taking time and giving grace and not putting too much pressure on yourself. Yeah, and I think the skills and the feelings of adequacy will come with time.
And how do you get that?
I think it will come with time, and as
practice, experience.
As you grow,
seeking for the right
field.
guidance, advice, right? These are all of the things that I think anybody can do to get better at anything, and everything. So,
cool.
Till next time, keep on applying those perspective, education, growth, and collaboration.